In this video tutorial, we will learn how we will create our user manager class that will help us to manage our application user instances. So every time we want to create, delete, or do any CRUD functionalities over our users within this membership website, our user manager class will be the class that will help us achieve this. So to create our user manager class, we first of all need to create a class that will inherit from our user manager. So let's create the class under the infrastructure folder. Right click on the infrastructure folder and add a new class. I'm going to name this class application user manager because it's going to help me manage the instances of my application user class. So I name this application user manager. I click add. So let's create the constructor for our application user manager class. So every time an instance of our application user manager class is created, the constructor will be called. Now, the application user manager class will call the base constructor of the user manager class. Let's look at the let's peek the definition and see what we have for our constructor of the user manager class. A user manager class constructor needs us to provide a parameter that is of type user store, which implements an interface of type user store. What is this user store? This user store is basically a class that comes with some methods and interfaces that can be implemented. This interfaces contains different methods. Like the iUserStore interface has methods that can help us to perform CRUD functionalities on our users, like create, delete, update, and that's one of the reasons why we are going to implement the iUserStore within the parameters of our constructor for application user manager class. You will specify where we want to implement the interface. We want to implement it on our application user, and let's name this parameter store. And since our base constructor requires us to pass an object of type iUserStore, we will pass our store to our base constructor, which is of user manager class. Now we have our constructor supply. Now let's finish our constructor. So that's it for this constructor. Now I need to create a method, a static method. This static method will be used when we create our instances of our middleware Oven. I will explain it to you once we reach to the part where we have to create a context for our Oven class. And that at that point we will use this static method. Let's create our static method. It will be of type public, so it can be accessed by other classes, and it's going to return an instance of our application user manager. So it's going to return an object of type application user manager. I'm going to name this method create because it's going to create an instance of application user manager for us. Within this method, we are going to specify two options as the parameters. We're going to supply two parameters. One is of object type identity factory options, and I will name this object as options, and the other parameter I'm going to specify is of type IOWin context and name this context. These two parameters, the options parameters will hold all the options of my user that I'm going to create, like his name, his username, his password, his email. The context will hold the instance of my application DB context, which is the connection to my database when creating the user. Now I'm going to create two variables. One variable that will get me the application DB context. That's the instance of my database. So within the IOWin context object, there is a method to get my application DB context, and I'll assign it to this variable. Another variable, that's my app user manager, that will create a new instance of my application user manager. And whenever we create a new instance of our application user manager, the base constructor requires us to specify an object of type user store. So new user store object will be created along with our new application manager, and provide reference to the class, that is application user class, because that holds the properties of our user. And we are going to call the second overload method that is available. One method is just, and that is to provide the DB context, and one is parameterless constructor. The other one is with the DB context, that's the database connection, and which is stored in this variable called a app DB context. I see this wiggly line here because I need to specify the type and the options for my application user manager. That should be it. And then finally, I need to return an object of type application user manager, which is this variable here. So that's it for our application user manager class. In the next video tutorial, I'll show you how you can create your Owin startup class and use this create method within your Owin startup class. Thank you for watching.